I'm Grace, 29, sitting in the backseat of a car that's driving me away from a life I was supposed to start tonight. My makeup's ruined, my wedding dress is torn, and my heart? It's somewhere between disbelief and fury. I still hear the collective gasp from the gas, still feel the sting in my ribs from where he kicked me on our wedding day. In front of everyone. I never thought I'd be the woman who'd get hurt like that. Not in a white gown, not surrounded by applause. But sometimes the real shock isn't the kick. It's realizing who you married. Before I dive into the story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Now let me take you back to how this all began. It started with the flowers. I remember walking into the venue for the final wedding walkthrough, and all I could see were the roses, too red, too perfect, too much. I wanted blush peonies, soft and understated, but Adam had insisted. Roses are stronger, he'd said, with a wink like he was doing me a favor. I laughed then, brushing it off. But now I look back and I see the metaphor. He didn't want softness. He wanted control. The morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling hollow. That's the only word for it. Not nervous, not excited, just this strange stillness inside me. Like my body was bracing for something my mind couldn't name. My bridesmaids fluttered around me, sipping mimosas, giggling over inside jokes I wasn't really part of anymore. I'd grown distant from most of them during my engagement. Adam didn't like them. Said they partied too much, influenced me, made me forget what real partnership looked like. I'd argued at first, but over time I just stopped inviting them over. I sat in front of a vanity as a stylist pinned curls into place, watching my own eyes in the mirror and wondering if I looked like a woman in love. My dress was stunning ivory lace, delicate sleeves, a long dramatic train, but I felt like I was putting on a costume. Pretending to be a bride, pretending this was a dream. My maid of honor, Rachel, squeezed my hand and said, "You're glowing." I smiled. I lied. Adam was late to the venue. 37 minutes late, to be exact. When he arrived, he didn't apologize. He'd kissed me on the cheek and said, "Hope you're not freaking out, babe. Traffic was hell." Then he laughed and high-fived his best man. I told myself to let it go. Don't ruin the day. Don't overthink it. The ceremony itself was a blur. I heard the music, saw the sea of faces, felt the heat of the spotlight. Adam's vows were polished, charming, perfectly rehearsed. Mine trembled. My hands shook so much I could barely slide the ring onto his finger. And when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and he pulled me into a kiss, he whispered in my ear, "Smile, you're mine now." The reception was where it unraveled. Somewhere between the speeches and the dancing, Adam had too much to drink. I tried to take his glass away. He grabbed my wrist hard enough that I gasped. People saw. No one said anything. Later, when we were doing our first dance, he whispered something so crude in my ear I stumbled. I pulled away. He didn't like that. I remember standing by the cake, cutting into it for the photos. He leaned in close and said, "You embarrassed me." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. He shoved the cake into my face harder than necessary. It hit my eye. My veil slipped. People laughed, awkward, unsure. I blinked through the frosting, trying to hold it together. And then came the moment. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave the stage, spun me back, and in one motion, kicked me squarely in the thigh hard enough that I lost balance and fell, crashing, down in a heap of white tulle and silence. The music stopped. The gasps were deafening. Someone dropped a glass. I looked up from the floor and met Adam's eyes. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look sorry. He looked victorious. I didn't cry right away. I didn't scream or throw anything or even get up. I just sat there on the floor, the hem of my dress crumpled beneath me, the air so quiet it rang in my ears. My heart was pounding in a way that made my arms tingle, and all I could think about was the eyes, so many eyes, watching, judging, pretending not to know what to do. My mother started toward me, but Adam raised a hand to stop her. That same hand he'd used to pull me close, to put on the show of a perfect groom. I hated how automatic her obedience was. She just stood there, frozen like everyone else did, and then I stood up, not gracefully, not like in the movies. My leg hurt, my makeup was streaked, my hair was coming undone. But I got to my feet, one slow breath at a time, and I looked at him. "Don't touch me again," I said, my voice low and shaking. A few people flinched. Adam looked around, smirked, and said loud enough for the crowd to hear, "Relax, she's just being dramatic. You know how she is." I walked past him, no. One tried to stop me, not one person followed. I remember the sound of my heels on the venue floor, each step echoing like a countdown to the death of every delusion I'd built around this man. I reached the exit doors and didn't look back until I was outside, alone, breathing night air that felt more honest than anything I'd experienced that entire day. Don't know how long I stood there before Rachel found me. She had kicked off her heels and was holding the train of my dress in her arms like it was something precious, not destroyed. "Are you okay?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I shook my head. I don't think I've been okay for a long time. We ended up in the backseat of her car, driving nowhere in particular. I didn't ask where we were going. I just needed to move, to get away from the echo chamber of that ballroom, from the murmurs of fake concern and the inevitable whispers that would follow. I could already hear the headlines in my mind. Bride walks out, drama at wedding. Did you see what she wore when he did it? But all I could think about was how numb I felt. Rachel pulled into a parking lot behind a little diner and handed me her phone. "You need to call someone, your dad, maybe?" I shook my head. "He's with my mom." "He's probably blaming me already." Rachel didn't argue. She just reached into the glove box and handed me a pack of makeup, wipes, and a bottle of water. "Then start with this. Clean your face, breathe. You don't have to decide anything right now." I wiped the cake from my cheek slowly, methodically, like I was peeling off a mask. Every swipe felt like a betrayal I'd ignored. The time he grabbed my arm and said I was too loud. The time he called me lucky he put up with me. The way he isolated me from my friends, always with a smile, always under the banner of love. I had convinced myself I was overreacting every single time, that I was the problem, that this violence, this public humiliation wasn't possible, but it was. It happened. And it happened to me. I stared at myself in the rearview mirror, and I didn't recognize the woman looking back. The next morning, I woke up in Rachel's guest room, still in my wedding dress. It was stiff with dried sugar and sweat, the zipper digging into my back. The sun was bright and unkind, pouring through the curtains like an interrogation light. My head throbbed from crying and exhaustion, but I forced myself to sit up. Rachel had left a note on the nightstand. "You're safe here. Stay as long as you need." There were scrambled eggs and toast waiting in the kitchen. A little normalcy in the middle of emotional carnage. I sat at the table in silence, letting the clock tick loudly. My phone had 17 missed calls. Half from Adam, half from my mother. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I walked to the mirror above the sink and stared at myself again. My face was puffy, my eyes swollen, but there was something different now. A hardness, a quiet, coiled anger. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going back. The third day after the wedding, the media caught wind of it. Someone had recorded the moment, of course they had, and the clip had been posted online. Within hours, it had gone viral. Groom kicks bride at wedding. The headline screamed, plastered with grainy screenshots of me falling, dress flying, up just enough to expose the bruise that was already forming. I hadn't wanted to look, but it was impossible to avoid. Even people who didn't know me were tagging me, messaging me. Some offered sympathy. Some told me I must have done something to deserve it. The internet had opinions, as always. But the worst part wasn't the strangers, it was the silence. From the people who mattered, my mother didn't call to ask if I was okay. She called to ask if I was sure I wanted to ruin his reputation. My father texted, "Don't make a scene, Gracie. Talk to him in private." Like I hadn't already been living in that private silence for years, suffocating under the weight of his rage dressed up as charm. My aunt left a voicemail saying, "Men do dumb things when they're drunk." He probably didn't mean it. It felt like I was drowning in everyone else's excuses. Only Rachel stood by me without question. She let me cry, scream, sit in silence, whatever I needed. And she reminded me, gently but firmly, that what happened wasn't my fault, that this wasn't just about a kick. It was about every time I'd been told to be quiet, every time I'd been treated like a thing to be handled, not a person to be loved. I started writing things down, memories, red flags, things he'd said that I had buried. I needed to see it in front of me. The time he told me my career was just a phase. The time he joked about how I'd never be anything without him. The time I cried in front of him and he rolled his eyes and said, "You're so exhausting." I had journal entries, text messages, even a few voicemails where his mask slipped and the cruelty bled through. It all felt so obvious in hindsight, so traceable, but at the time, I was just a woman in love, hoping for the best. The week after the wedding, I filed for annulment. It wasn't easy. His family threatened me with legal action. My mother called me a disgrace. Adam sent me a bouquet of roses with a card that read, "You ruined everything. Hope you're happy." But what hurt the most was how lonely it felt to choose myself. I remember sitting on Rachel's balcony that night, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights blink through the fog. She came out with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside me, saying nothing for a while. Then quietly, "This doesn't end here, right?" "I know," I whispered. "You sure you're ready for the fight?" I didn't answer for a long time. Then I looked at her, feeling the weight of everything I had lost, my illusion of love, my family's support, my future as I'd imagined it. And I said the only true thing I could find in myself: I'm ready for the truth. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just trying to recover from a ruined wedding. I was digging my way out of a system of control that had been built. Brick by Adam, by my upbringing, by a world that told women like me to keep our voices down. But not anymore. That was the night I took off the ring. Not in some dramatic way, not with tears or music. I simply slipped it off and dropped it in a drawer. I didn't need to look at it again, because what mattered now wasn't what I had lost. It was who I was becoming. It's been 7 months since he kicked me in front of 300 guests. 7 months since I walked out of that ballroom and into a hurricane I didn't even know how to name. People say time heals. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal. Truth does. Boundaries do. Choosing yourself every single day, even when it feels like betrayal, that's what begins to close the wound. I didn't think I'd ever speak about that day publicly. I wanted to bury it, to disappear, to rebuild without anyone watching me. Limp through it. But trauma has a strange way of making silence unbearable. And when the clip resurfaced again, when people started stitching it with their own takes and theories, I realized I had a choice. Let the world tell my story. Or tell it myself. So I spoke. It wasn't a dramatic interview or a viral podcast. It was just me, sitting in a small apartment in front of my phone, speaking to the camera. My voice shook, my hands trembled. But I said it all, not just the kick, the emotional erosion, the isolation, the way abuse wears pretty clothes and calls itself love until you can't tell the difference anymore. I didn't name him, didn't have to. The video spread like wildfire. Not because I was anyone special, but because I was too many people's story. The comments flooded in, some from women I knew, most from ones I'd never met. Strangers who said, "This was my wedding too," or "I wish I'd walked away when you did." And some were from people still living in it. Quiet prisoners in pretty houses behind diamond rings. He tried to respond, of course. Posted his version of events. Claimed I had emotional issues. Said I overreacted. Tried to frame me as hysterical, unstable, bitter. But something had shifted in the tide. People weren't buying it anymore. Because the world is changing. Slowly, painfully, but it's changing. He lost a few business deals. Got dropped from a consulting firm. His friends stopped inviting him to certain events. And though that wasn't the justice I wanted, it was something. A small ripple. A crack in the mirror he built for himself. But the real win? I stopped answering his calls. I got a job at a women's shelter downtown, helping others who didn't get to walk away as cleanly as I did. I met women with bruises on their spirits, not just their bodies. And with every intake form I helped them fill, I felt a piece of myself stitching back together. Not in spite of what happened to me, but because I finally knew what to do with it. I started seeing someone too. His name is Elijah. He's quiet in a way that doesn't demand attention, just offers it. The first time he reached for my hand, I flinched. Not because I thought he'd hurt me, but because part of me still expects love to come with a catch. He didn't pull away. He waited, listened, kept showing up. He knows what happened. Not because I gave him the viral version, but because one night I sat on his couch in my pajamas and gave him the real one, the soft, messy, unfinished one, and he didn't try to fix me. He just said, "You don't know me pretty." And maybe that's the thing I've been learning most of all. I don't know anyone pretty, or polite, or silence. I don't have to make people comfortable with the truth just because they'd rather hear the edited version. A few weeks ago, I went back to the venue, not for revenge, not to relive it, just to reclaim something. I walked through the ballroom, empty now, just echoes and chandeliers. I stood at the spot where it happened, the stage, the cake table, the space where I fell. And then I did something I never thought I would. I smiled, because that floor, it didn't break me. It caught me, gave me the bottom I needed to push off. From I'm not ashamed of it anymore. That moment was the ugliest gift the universe ever gave me, and I'm done pretending it didn't change everything. I walked out that day thinking, I have lost everything, but I didn't. I found myself, and I will never, ever give her away again. The end.